Hey, everybody, and welcome to the last IT podcast in the world, where we talk about life in corporate IT, tech in general, business, leadership, and anything else we want to banter about. My name's David Wheat. He's Darrick, my co-host. I am the founder and principal consultant of Alt-CIO Consulting, and we're looking forward to sharing our ideas on how IT can not just be fair, not just good, but it can be great, sometimes by pointing out how bad it can be as well. So, we're going to have fun along the way. I hope that even non-IT people will eventually enjoy this podcast. You can email us at podcast@alt-cio.com if you've got feedback, questions, or want to be on the show. Looking forward to that. Heads up, if you want to be on the show, you must have a solid banter game. We're going to banter on this, so bring your A game if you're going to be on the show. Hey, Darrick.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Sure. How are things?
They're good. Nice and hot. Yep.
Yeah. Darrick's in Texas. Dave's in Colorado. So we've got very different weather patterns. Hey, Darrick, I don't know, the last IT podcast in the world, strange name, did I ever tell you how we came to the name?
No.
Last IT podcast in the world. Well, one day I received this letter in the mail. You can see it if you're on YouTube. You can't see it if you're on audio only. But I'll just read it to you, okay? And this will tell the story. So I received this letter in the mail. It was pretty scary. It had the official government seal on the top of it. I always like to get those. From the Federal Communications Commission, Domestic Podcast Division, Technology Sector, IT Subsector. If you can track all that. Washington, D.C. This is the bad part. It had a case number on it. Case number 23-0721-80550 stroke. You don't say slash on a government email.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you say stroke 2116-IT. Dear Mr. Wheat, our records indicate that you have not yet started a technology or IT-related podcast as of the date of this notice. It's a notice. It's got a case number and it's a notice. I'm in trouble. Per regulation stipulated in the Domestic Onshore Podcasting Enactment, or DOPE, passed by Congress in 2019, all working IT professionals are required to start a podcast to reduce America's dependence on foreign podcast imports by January 2023. I had no idea. Did you catch that in the news?
I missed that one in the news, yeah.
That must have been a rider on some bigger bill or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's apparently a threat of over-import on podcasts, and we want to tap into our domestic supply, Darrick.
Yeah.
I support that.
Yeah, patriotic American. I want to be self-reliant.
I didn't know it was going to come to my doorstep like this. Not only are you overdue to start a podcast, but our records also further indicate that you're the last working IT professional in the United States to do so. That makes sense. I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that. Everybody I know is running a podcast. Please choose one of the following options to avoid possible fines and or community service, which may include teaching the class Smartphone Basics at senior living facilities.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, so I'm pretty interested in not doing that. There are some exemptions. So there's a religious exemption.
Okay.
Please complete Form FCC 2018-001A stroke 42 if you're unable to start, host, produce, or co-host a technology-related podcast due to religious convictions. Do you know, I'm trying to think of what that would be.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a sect that would have that problem, but...
Amish, maybe.
Amish, yeah.
But why would they be in IT? Why would they be in IT so it's confusing?
Yeah.
But they're being considered.
There's some weird quirks there, right? They can have engines as long as they're not propelling something. So maybe there's a carve out where you can work in IT but not use electricity. I don't know.
Don't know. But I appreciate them that they've thought through that there could be some.
Yeah.
I can't check that box, so I moved on. Married podcasting jointly. I thought that was odd.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If your spouse is actively hosting, co-hosting, or producing a technology-related podcast, you may be exempt from starting a new podcast. Please complete form blah, blah, blah to be considered for this exemption.
Okay.
So I guess it's just like per household.
Yeah. So it's
like
every IT household has to produce a podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess I couldn't check that because my spouse is not hosting, co-hosting, or producing a technology-related podcast. You know, it's like a baking show or something, so I can't...
That wouldn't cover it.
Can't check that one. Dang it. I'm running out of exemptions here. Active podcast support role. If you produce or provide technical assistance for an existing technology podcast hosted in the United States or its territories, You may be exempt from starting your own podcast. I don't do that. I don't co-host or produce or anything.
Okay.
So that's nice that you don't have to be like the voice. You can be like the support staff.
Yeah.
The final exemption is currently serving time in federal prison for crypto-related fraud. That seems very specific.
That's very, very specific.
It's like an exemption for, well, that's probably a lot of people,
like 3
actually.
people, yeah.
Well, it may be more than that. I mean,
But that seems like there was a very specific situation in mind that
someone lobbied. I think someone lobbied the
also
domestic
I don't want my
podcast
friend
division.
I don't want my friend, Frank to have a podcast ever again, so let's make sure we ban him.
He cheated me out of his crypto. Okay. So I couldn't check any of those, unfortunately. So if none of the above exemptions apply to you, you must start an IT or technology related podcast as soon as possible to comply with the dope regulations. Debatable if they're dope, just for the record. Our agency provides several resources to help you get started in this important strategic domestic policy, including the pamphlets, learn to say like and subscribe a lot, and how much the IRS takes if you monetize your content, and podcast or pod, which do the cool kids say, and many others. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope to receive these pamphlets. I really believe they are pamphlets too.
Yeah.
I could have put it online, but you have to send them a stamp. Yeah. Please send the link to the first episode of your podcast prior to 9/1/2023. That's why we're doing this, Darrick.
We're under the
To avoid
wire.
potential penalties or civil actions. Signed, I'm a Gabber, Deputy Assistant to the Regional Manager, Domestic Technology Podcast, Western Region Enforcement Division. So
assistant to the regional manager, not the regional manager.
yeah, it's the government. So she's the Deputy Assistant to the Regional Manager. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty far down the line.
And so, here we are. It's apparently the last podcast in the world. By the way, I'm using the word world. This is U.S. domestic policy. I'm using the world in like the NBA world champion sense of the word, like Major League Baseball world champions. So last podcast in the world, America edition. So that's I think we are. I think we're the last podcast, but last doesn't mean worst. We're going to be great. So let's get into it. And sometimes we're going to talk about the news. Anyway, so does that explain? By the way, did that explain?
That's a good reason.
And now because you're co-hosting, you won't get that nasty letter.
Yeah, that's a big relief for me and my family, I think.
Good. Yeah, you don't look good in orange, I'm sure. So we're going to talk a little bit about the news, and we're definitely going to be talking a lot about return to office. Ever since COVID, remote work, 100% for a lot of people in office knowledge, IT, office, corporate related jobs, and of course now there's this big battle on RTO, return to office, and hybrid work, remote work, and read a lot of articles on it. But this one caught my eye in the news recently. Zoom asked employees to return to office for first time since COVID-19 pandemic. Did you see this news, Darrick?
I saw the headline, but I'm stunned. Yeah.
You instantly have a reaction.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, before I go too far into this, you sort of already have a reaction, which we may share. I just want to see, what's your initial...
I guess first, as a work from home participant and proponent, you see this cudgel is now going to be wielded by every RTO advocate, right? Even Zoom can't
Even
do
Zoom.
it.
So let's for our listeners, we're the tech savvy people. What would you say that Zoom's primary product is, and what does it do? What does it enable?
Video conferencing, so remote work and meetings.
It's for when people aren't together. It would be weird if you sat next to someone at a coffee shop and Zoomed with them while you sat next to them.
Right.
Or in the office.
Right.
So literally, they are a remote collaboration platform.
And didn't their stock went through the roof because of remote work and COVID, like that? They were there and available when that happened, and their growth exploded as a result of remote work. And
and then it came back down. We'll talk about that in a minute. So for the record, I'll tell you the details and we'll talk about them. So really what they're asking about, Zoom has told its employees to return to the office for the first time since the video communications tool saw a boom during the remote work revolution of the coronavirus pandemic. The tech company is now requesting, are they? Is it just requesting? All employees within, catch this, 50 miles of a company office to return for in-person work at least 2 days a week on a hybrid schedule. I mean, just for the record, we're not saying it has to be 0 days in the office forever, but 2 days a week, that would be pretty. Some companies are doing 3, some are doing all 5, so that's not a ton.
Pretty typical hybrid.
But within 50 miles, I'm going to talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then they said, we believe that a structured hybrid approach, meaning employees that live near an office need to be on site 2 days a week to interact with their teams, is the most effective for Zoom, a company spokesman said. As a company, we are in a better position to use our own technologies, ? Continue to innovate and support our global customers. And so let me go on. Zoom shares skyrocketed in 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic forced millions of employees and students to work online from their homes. The resource allowed people to connect with coworkers, educators, and classmates over video chat as much of the world was stranded in their homes. We'll continue to leverage the entire Zoom platform to keep our employees and dispersed teams connected and working efficiently. So they still have a lot of remote employees. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let me see. But towards the end of 2021, Zoom stock took a nosedive, and the company has lost at least $100 billion in market value since that point, as employees around the globe return to the office and no longer require video conferencing. The stock stagnated again this year as workers continued returning to work in person. So I could take the snarky approach of saying the thing that made you rich and that brought you to the forefront, which was the ability to remote work on a collaboration platform, is now gone back, and you're adding fuel to the fire. You're like saying, yeah, you should go back. The thing that cost us $100 billion in valuation, you should all do that. Because we're doing
pretty self-destructive message.
A little bit. I have questions about that. By the way, I didn't notice, but there's a product called Zoom One, which includes email and everything. It's basically Office 365 Zoom Edition. And I'd hate to be on that marketing team right now for Zoom One, because they could position it as your remote work solution, but this kind of maybe undermines it a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. So I could go that route. The market, they're not using their own tools, but you understand that there could be some value in getting together 2 days a week. The thing I want to focus on is a lot of these policies are so difficult to implement. So think about that 50-mile limit.
Right.
That there's someone who lives 48 miles away from the Zoom office. By the way, there's offices in San Jose and Denver, maybe a few others, but those are the big ones. There's someone who lives 48 miles away, whose kid goes to school with an employee who lives 52 miles away.
Right. I have to go. You don't.
And are you going to the office? No, I live 52 miles away. Are you going? Yeah, I have to. I live 48 miles away. It's
a very interesting I guess you have to have a cutoff at some point, but I think that idea is interesting because it tells you that the employee that's 52 miles away is still worth having, even if they don't come into the office. But the employee that's 48 miles away, you will fire them before you will have them work remotely 5 days a week.
Right. So I did a little bit of sleuthing on LinkedIn. There are about 4,500 plus Zoom employees in the United States.
Okay.
And they list their 2 big offices as San Jose and Denver, so I focused on that. Between San Jose and Denver, approximately 1,500, let's be generous, approximately 2,000 employees live near one of those 2 offices, which means that the majority of the company does not live 50 miles away from 2 of those offices. So that's always the interesting thing is how do you've got such a remote workforce, how do you force some of them to commute? And by the way, you know Colorado geography because you lived here for a while, but Longmont, Colorado is about 50 miles away from the Denver office, which, by the way, is smack in downtown Denver. And I looked it up on Google Maps, and on a Monday morning to get there at 8:30, it's going to take you an hour to an hour and 30 minutes. Times 2 days a week, that's 4 to each way.
4 hours, maybe 5 hours a week taken away from you.
4 to 5 hours a week added to your schedule. And by the way, again, there's value in being together and collaborating, but I'll be watching this space a little bit on Zoom.
Yeah.
But it's odd to see a collaboration company. I mean, they could have taken a whole other marketing approach, which says like, we're all in, man. We're all in on, and yeah, we're still going to get together as teams, but we're going to
Yeah.
do it kind of like as
At,
needed
at an event
or project based. If it's project kickoff and we're doing a big detailed design, we're going to come together for a week and then we're going to go back to wherever we want and things like that. But I just thought it was interesting that one of the key collaboration platforms that has seen its stock shrink dramatically because of back to office says us too. Like
that's. I'm curious how much of that is not loss in remote work, but how much of that is loss in market share for remote work too.
Right. Anyway, interesting.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about RTO. We'll try to be fair and balanced. You and I both spend a lot of our time working remotely.
Yep.
I think we both, because of our career stage and role, we'll talk about that going forward. Career stage and role definitely matters. But I'll just say, as an IT leader, as a former CIO, VP of IT, like a company should build its IT infrastructure for remote work. Mm-hmm. And by the way, that works really well in the office too. So
right.
We'll talk about that in our next episode. We're going to talk about some of the security approaches that fell through it in COVID and why that was, and it's because of office spaces and things like that. So we'll keep talking about RTO. There's a lot going on there. We'll see what happens with Zoom. We'll look on LinkedIn for turnover or whatever. But really interesting news, I thought.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Darrick, it's time for our hashtag Bad IT segment. You can't be great at IT until you can acknowledge what's bad, what's broken. And today we're going to talk not about corporate IT, but some apps we both have experience with. I'm going to start by leading with an app that I think is pretty good, but I'll talk about the other end of that technology experience. But and then we'll transition into your app that could be better. Let's say.
Yeah.
Maybe
there's
has
a bad IT segment of an app that's otherwise good.
Yeah. So I like any app that lets me skip lines. Like if I can walk into a place and walk past everybody else, that's one of my favorite apps. And one of those is the Great Clips app. So, Darrick, looking at your gorgeous mop of hair, I'm sure you have a stylist. Yeah, I'm sure. I want you to see mine. There you go. There you go. I'm sure you have a stylist, that knows you by name and he's got your very specific styling done. But I can walk into any Great Clips anywhere and say, shear me. Like, run over my head with your clippers until it's all gone. So I can, Great Clips Supercuts, but I love the Great Clips app because you go open the app, you say, hey, I want to check in now. It'll tell me the wait time. It'll estimate the wait time. I'll say, check in now. I'll say, do you want to text when you're 15 minutes from ready? And I'll say, yep. And I'm at home working. And when it says, hey, we're ready for you, I just drive in. I walk in. My name is at the top of the list. They take me next. There's always some people that look a little bit resentful at me that don't seem to understand there's a Great Clips app. And I avoid the temptation to educate them because that would probably be socially awkward. And I get my haircut. So hey, at Great Clips. By the way, I'm not super savvy like at mentioning. Can we at mention people on podcasts?
Probably. Someone's got to be listening. This government agency's got to be listening for it, so they'll pick it up.
Yeah, the NSA or AI. Like if I say, hey, at Great Clips, good job on your app, does that somehow get to them somehow? I presume so.
Probably. I'm sure that's
like Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do that. Let's, like, hey, at Zoom. Sorry, I forgot to do it. Hey, at Zoom, if you want to come on the show and we can talk about RTO and how you came to 50 miles versus 60 or 45 or whatever. And I'm guessing it's because the CFO lives 55 miles away. Anyway. So anyway, I love that. Like, anyway, and but here's the second part of my Great Clips experience. So the app is great, but recently when I got my hair cut, and by the way, they charged me full price. It's a little bit hard to swallow. But at checkout at the credit card kiosk, now the kiosks are doing some helpful tip calculation for you. Mm-hmm. And I'm fine with tipping my hairdresser. There's other people I have beef about tipping, but I'm fine with tipping tipping whoever cuts my hair. But instead of percentages, it started. So my haircut, by the way, was $22, which has gone up considerably recently. My haircut, which took 6.5 minutes to do, cost me $22.
Zero
when I went to
blade
check
changes.
out, and like it presents, and the stylist who cuts your hair also rings you up.
Mm-hmm.
So she is standing on the other side of the counter like this, and then comes to the tip screen, and the tip screen said, not percentages, it said, would you like to tip $5? That was the low end. $7 was the medium, $9 was the top. And then at the very small print at the bottom, it said, click here to enter another amount. And I thought to myself, I know she's looking right at me, but I'm going to say, and this is the first, it used to let me just put in an amount.
How much do I want my
should-
scalp to bleed next time I'm here?
And so while she was looking at me, I said, choose another amount. And I tipped less than $5 on 22. And so my only point about that is that's kind of a classic. Like, that's not a technology. That's just a technology
choice.
platform that someone made a business decision on.
Yeah.
And I wrote him. I said, like, hey, like, I'd prefer not to have to stare down the hairdresser while I choose a reasonable tip amount. Can you please, change it to like 10, 15, or 20%, and
Yeah.
have it back from them. So that's pretty good. That was kind of good IT, but the thing about bad IT, it's like Roy Kent. Like we were talking earlier, you're familiar with the show Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Bad IT is like Roy Kent, in the fact that they're both everywhere.
Here, there, everywhere.
Yep.
It's here, it's there, it's really everywhere. Bad idea, bad idea. It's here, it's there, it's really everywhere. Bad idea, bad idea.
We're always on the lookout for bad IT so that we can talk about it and talk about how things could be better or great. So tell me about your app. Tell me about what's going on with your app.
Yeah, so like your great clip story, this is actually part of a good IT story with a bad feature. So my son plays select baseball, and he's so we're at the ball field a lot on weekends. And one of the technologies you get introduced to in select baseball, or even a lot of rec baseball now, is this app called Game Changer, and it's a really good app. It's basically all the complexity of baseball scoring boiled down to a mobile-friendly app that you can put in balls and strikes, and it'll calculate kids' averages.
Who's putting that in? Like, who's using this app?
So in rec ball, it's probably the coach's wife. In
She's like the scorekeeper. She's like the
In select baseball, it's a parent that wants to make the coach like them, probably
and put their kid in more.
Right, and make sure typically their kids will have fewer errors, and they'll reach base on infield singles more than errors.
Oh, that was a hit. Yeah, that was not a hit.
definitely.
They reached on a hit.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of bias.
Are you that parent, Darrick? You can tell the crowd. Are you that parent?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Are you the scorekeeper on that?
Yeah. No, I have done it. I'm not the one currently, but I have done it in the past.
You're not currying favor or trying to get ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some bias that leaks in there. So yeah, great app. And one of the things they've done recently is integrated video. So they integrate video, and they'll integrate radar guns. So they can integrate pitch velocity when you're recording a pitch, and they'll integrate the video of the game, so that grandma and grandpa can stream Johnny's game if they're out of state or they don't want to go to a hot ball field in the summer. So they can go to the app, and they can see the game's about to start, and they click on it, and they can watch Johnny play ball from probably an iPhone camera strapped to the backstop at the game. So
I see. So that's separate. That's separate than the scorekeeping app.
So because of that, they have you have to have certain privileges to be a scorekeeper. Not any parent can be a scorekeeper, but to stream video, anybody that's a fan of the team can do it, because typically it's yet another parent that, here, I'll do video today.
So if there's 10 parents sitting in the stands and 20 grandparents somewhere else, they've all got a copy of this app.
Yeah.
And they're watching balls and strikes and what the scorekeeper's putting in.
Right.
And any one of those people can do what now?
Any one of those people can hit a button and say, I would like to stream video, and they're now streaming the video for the game, and that's the video that's being synced to the game, to the balls and strikes. That anybody else
not the backstop camera, whatever whatever person
Right.
pressed.
And whatever person presses button. The problem is this is a giant red button that says go live. And so to your point about the penalty for not doing a podcast, a grandparent has this app that they can stream Johnny's games on, and they see a big red button that says go live.
Go live. I
with a
want to do
video
that,
camera
right?
on it. I want to go live. I want to see
I'd like
Johnny's
to go
game.
live and see the game.
I want to see it live. And so they're streaming live, and it's not obvious if it's on your phone that you're streaming live. It probably looks a little confusing to them because they're seeing their own phone or tablet's camera output, and it looks like their coffee table.
Their knees.
So their knees, and so they, you know,
Is there audio too?
yeah, their audio too. If they happen to venture off to the restroom, you capture all of that.
Or them saying, "I'm not seeing it." Marge,
Yeah.
are you seeing
Well,
it? Like,
yeah. And so what typically happens is they'll turn it on. They'll be streaming. A bunch of parents at the game will be frustrated that they'll get a call from another younger parent that's, "Hey, I can't stream the audio. It's Johnny's grandpa." And the frantic effort ensues to call Johnny's grandpa to, "Hey, turn off your phone." Because nobody else, as long as they're streaming, nobody else can take that over. And,
oh my goodness.
And so what you'll have happen is they'll give up on it. The grandparent will say, "Oh, the app isn't working. Let's just see my camera," and they throw the app on their coffee table and proceed to watch a show and clip their toenails, and that's all streamed and it's all recorded for the game. Yeah, and so one of the really cool features the Game Changer does have is it will clip highlights for your kids off of the video feed paired with the scorekeeping that's happening. So if your kid hits a double, it'll record that minute block around that double and add it to your kid's highlights. But if the video feed is grandma's coffee table, your kid's highlight of your greatest hit you've ever had is grandma's coffee table.
If you were so just to clarify for people, so like anybody can start the video streaming of the game, even though other permissions are limited to like the scorekeeper.
Yeah.
Anyone can start it.
So I did see, so when you get inside the app, there's sort of, the permissions are very, you can either say anybody that's a fan of the team can stream it, so all parents, all grandparents, or you can restrict it to admin only, but admins can score games, and you can only have a couple of admins. So it's usually the coach, the assistant coach, maybe an organizational team member, and the parent that does game scoring. So you either have this highly restricted permissions where only that one sort of select parent can do it, which they typically can't because it's another phone, or at least another phone needs to be connected to it, or anybody that's a fan of the team, all 30 people. So, yeah, what's
Hey,
really
you and I finish your thought, and then we're gonna fix this together.
What's really missing, I think, is a third permission or third role of
Exactly.
I'm a video parent and I can do video. And if you could restrict that to a handful of people,
So you and I have worked together multiple times in the past, and we have designed things together. we love doing that. And so let's take your idea and let's just flesh it out a little bit. We would fix that by adding a third permission, video administrator or something like you said. And we wouldn't charge more for that, but we might. Here's the thing: some parents won't be at every game, or the husband can be, but the wife can't be.
Exactly.
So you'd probably want to have 4 or 5. Like, the app designer wants to limit it. Like, they don't want to have 100 people.
Right.
So maybe you can have 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever. Because if you do 20, including grandpa, you're back to the same problem, right?
Exactly.
And maybe 3 or 4. Like you can add up to 4 admins, and by the way, if you need to swap someone out for a game, whoever's the admin can say, Darrick can't be at the game, so we'll add another admin in as long as it stays at 4.
Yeah.
And those people are trained and competent on who's got this game versus who's got that game or whatever, right? Or maybe that's another feature of the app. They can be designated by game because they're going to be there.
That would be a great feature, is to have a guest admin that you could extend beyond the core 4 there.
Yeah, that's a great call out on And, by the way, hey at Game Changer, that's what they're calling it.
Yeah.
Hey at Game Changer, the app. If you'd like to come on the show and we can design this together,
Yep.
happy to have you. So I'm sure
And
they're going to get that and it's going to come back.
oh yeah, it'll circle back
They'll
and
give us feedback at podcast@alt-cio.com, and we'll have them on the show. We'll talk it over.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. It's otherwise a great app. They do a lot of cool stuff, and but yeah, just one glaring permission / maybe user interface change would clean a lot of that up.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we're always going to keep our eyes open for bad IT. We've got like a list as long as your arm for future podcasts because unfortunately there's a lot out there that's bad, and we're going to talk on this podcast about how things can be better. Let's transition to the big idea of this podcast, which really applies directly to people in corporate IT, that are working for companies and are growing companies. Alt-CIO Consulting specializes in small, medium / growing companies that need better IT, don't know where to get it. That's where we come in. But so technology acquisition, buying a new technology. Now, sometimes buying a new technology is as easy as swiping your credit card and off you go. But when you're talking about these bigger systems, like whether it's an ERP system or warehouse management system or trade management solution, or these bigger kind of enterprise or company-wide systems, there's a lot to that. We're going to talk about one very specific part of that process that can be very misleading. And it's inspired by this email that I got, Darrick, and I've shared it with you. I know you've seen it. And I'm not going to read the whole email, and it's not that much. And I'm going to really riff on kind of this one part of it and how that applies to some of these bigger things. But I got this email to my business address, and it said, "Hi, David. I understand that you're probably looking for better kind of tools." I'll just pick. We're not going to pick on the company for Alt-CIO Consulting, since your sector has been long neglected in that sense. So first of all, like I'm a victim. And so like we're here for you, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. And then it says our platform, ... their name, will build your budget automatically in a matter of seconds, and allows you to simulate a variety of scenarios that can impact your cash flow and profitability. It's completely free to sign up and tinker with. So there's more to that, but like there's a reason I want to riff on that. So whatever this platform is, it will calculate my budget automatically. Now, Darrick, I don't know how you take the word automatically, but I take it as no work for me,
Right.
and automated for something else.
Yeah.
And by the way, automatically, how long will it take? A matter of seconds.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to talk about today is they're basically, when you buy a big solution for your business, like you're going to live with this for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years, and it's going to have multiple users, and it's not cheap. You're going to have to go through a project to get it. There are basically 3 phases of doing that, and we're talking about the sales cycle. We're going to talk about the sales cycle today, and not going to cover it soup to nuts today. We're going to keep talking about this topic because it's complicated, but oftentimes you'll get a cross-functional team together and say we're going to have accounting there and finance there and operations there and maybe some other departments. And by the way, IT, if they even think of IT, which they should, by the way, will be there. I'll tell you why IT should be there in a minute. But anyway, and they're going to go like sit through vendor pitches and decide who's on the short list and things like that. And that is a very, very dangerous time for your company.
Yes, it is.
And it's because of things like this. And by the way, I should insert here that I have worked with some of the best, most professional sales persons, like really high respect for some of the sales people that I've worked with. Like they're interested in our success. They partner with us. They're really would walk away from a sale if it wasn't the right thing. So let's just put that aside, and I'll say the rest of what I want to say, which is, first of all, there's this a lot of overpromising on how what they want you to believe. So you're all sitting around, and it's like an hour-long pitch. There's a PowerPoint. They're walking through it. It's great. They want you to believe that it's super easy to implement whatever it is.
Yep.
In our case, automatically in a matter of seconds. Now, that's not what they're going to pitch on these bigger systems, but they want to get you to believe that this is going to be a cakewalk.
Yeah.
It's going to be super easy.
And if you've gotten to that point, I would imagine the customer really wants that to be true. You're about ready to spend some money on some software, and you invited this sales team in. You want this to be the solution, and you want it to work. Otherwise, you wouldn't have taken the call. You wouldn't have the meeting.
That's such a good point, Darrick. The cognitive biases that we bring into that room of, gosh, I hope this isn't hard. Oh, they told me it's not hard. That's great. I believe that because I want it to be true. You know, so... and by the way, you're just looking at PowerPoint slides. There might be like a little bit of a recorded demo, but it's all just like static information. They'll always show you a slide of all the major brands of logos that they work with, and you'll say, wow. I mean, all those other big companies, they're using it. Like, I guess, and so you're feeling successful. So the second thing they want is they want you to feel affinity for the salesperson. They want you to like them.
Mm-hmm.
So these people are like the friendliest, smiliest, generally people, because they like literally our brains are going like, I can't, if you have two competing software solutions or technologies and one is probably the clear fit for your company, but the person was kind of not super likable, like the likable person has a lot of advantage. Like, and they're going to be likable by reassuring you and telling you how easy it is, and like I've heard people say it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if it's automatic or in seconds. I've heard people say, implementation is 6 to 8 weeks. When I know, based on what my experience, we'll talk about that in a minute, is like, I don't think there's any way this is 6 to 8 weeks. Like, we probably can't, and by the way, it takes, 6 to 8 weeks just to sign the contract.
Yeah.
And then it takes 2 to 3 weeks to schedule your first meeting when everyone can do the kickoff. And then, oh, by the way, there's other stuff you forgot. Like, we've got to integrate it with our other systems and things like that. But, so, and by the way, the third thing is they'll show you a dashboard. Every system's got a dashboard.
Everybody's got a dashboard.
Man, I don't know. Like, we just see dashboards and we get hypnotized. Like, and I don't want to oversell this point, but almost every built-in vendor-provided dashboard that's built into a system, a big system, I've never seen any company actually use those and make, because
Right.
Each company's got their own different data needs.
Are
And things
different.
like
Their metrics they're interested in are different.
And I'm not saying it's 100% true, but generally that's a sizzle cell that rarely is the focus of your everyday life once you're living with the system. You're not like, okay, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, let's check out the dashboard. You're just like, nope, I'm going to go right to sales orders or shipping or whatever. And finance and accounting probably has other tools to do their dashboarding with. So they're kind of making it look sexy. Now, here's the problem. The problem is most of the people that I described on that cross-functional team are going to, buy 1 or 2 or 3 major systems like that, maybe in their career, like where they're
Right.
on the team. And so, whereas someone like me, deep in my career, I've sat through dozens. I was thinking about it today, probably hundreds of those presentations.
Wow.
And then implemented dozens of those systems. And after a while, you realize, hey, wait a minute. Like, we don't ever use the dashboard. And, did we buy this because we liked that sales rep, because they were so friendly and they took us out to dinner? Or they said it would be simple, but we are on month 9, of the implementation.
Yeah.
And so, someone with experience, hopefully you've got people on your team that have experience on selecting systems and know what to look for. We'll talk more about, we're running out of time in today's podcast, but there are other techniques for when you're acquiring technology that I think are really effective for getting past. So when the sales rep is giving you their spiel, they're in the driver's seat. You are just receiving information, and they're telling the truth, kind of, but they could tell you whatever you'd want, and you'd take it in. But there's ways later, we'll talk about it in some future episode, about how to once you've thought about what you want to buy, sort of validating your decision so that you take those cognitive biases out. Like you want to, the next thing you do before you buy technology, which we'll talk about down the road, I'll make a note, we'll cover it, we'll talk about it and bring it back up. But you want to flip it around so that you are sure you're not paying attention to your cognitive biases or having affinity based decision making or just hearing what you want to hear. And there's ways to do that. So have you had any experience, like have you been on teams like that before, or have you had that experience?
So I've been in a different position. I haven't been in those leadership roles. I've been more in like a technical advisor role, and so I think I feel sympathy for the decision maker in those situations who's not IT savvy, because, like we said, they want it to be true. They're flash these logos of larger companies and themselves say, well, if Amazon uses this, surely you can't be more complicated than Amazon. And to your point of, you're almost shamed into saying, well, yeah, we should be able to make this work if you can make it work for them. But they don't know what's unique about your business and your IT environment that might make that more complicated a decision. And I also think in IT it's hard because if you're buying software, there's a chance this software is not in the technologies your team knows or wants to use. And so your own team maybe is going to be very negative, and you're going to be skeptical of their no. So I think you want to have your IT team there that you can trust, and you want to have somebody that will be honest with you about why that you trust to say no to. Like, here, this isn't a good fit. Here's why. Or you trust their yes. Like, yeah, this is a good fit, even if it isn't the tools I would like to be using or I'm comfortable with. I think that's just a hard situation if you're a non-technical decision maker on those purchases.
Yeah, that's a great point. That makes me think that, one of the things that gets overlooked most by functional people, but which hopefully experienced IT people know to talk about, is there's almost no standalone system anymore. It's going to integrate with something. It's going to integrate with your CRM or your ERP or your WMS or your marketing platform or your e-commerce platform or your whatever.
Authentication, single sign-on. You're going to want to deal with that.
And that can be often one of the most complicated parts of the project, is getting systems to talk to each other. And functional users, excellent with their functional knowledge. They know what they're looking for on what it needs to do for their job function, which is great. But they don't know the questions to ask about how does it integrate, and does it integrate with, do you have a native connector for our platform, or are we going to have to develop one from scratch? And by the way, I'm going to talk sometime later about this, but just because something has an API
doesn't mean it
and
matches.
They all do.
Yeah.
Everything's got an API, and they say, yep, we integrate with every system. Yeah, but how? And how much work is it? Am I going to have to write custom code, or do you have a pre-built connector, or is there middleware that's something that I can buy? And oh, by the way, how much does that cost? Which talks to their thing and talks to your thing. And integration can really, if you don't do it right, can take away a lot of the gains you get from the new system. You want efficiency, ROI, payback. You want to be able to scale without having to add staff if you're buying the right systems. But if you do integration wrong, you can sort of lose all those advantages because you're still manually doing things, or they break all the time, or
it's a bad fit for your
project
existing tools.
is too long to do. What now?
Or it's a bad fit for your existing tools, and you can integrate but not well, and so you've got data that's not aligned between the two systems. And
so let's say you're a Microsoft / Azure shop. You've got all your infrastructure running on Azure. We'll talk about what that is later. Azure's a lot of things, but you can put your servers up there, and you can have middleware running up there. And they say, like, we're built for Google, and Google has a fine cloud platform. It's not quite Azure, but that's the kind of thing that you can really get yourself into a mess with. This integrates well with Looker or with Google's data warehouse or other things, but does it have pre-built for AWS or for Azure? There's a lot of technologies, and the reason this is an important topic and why it's on the first podcast is you are making a typically significant dollar investment in a technology. You're generally going to sign a contract for 2 to 3 years. Don't sign more than 3, for crying out loud. Sometimes they'll want you to sign for 5. Maybe we can talk about that, but and you're going to go through a multi-month, probably implementation to get it done, and it's going to tax your staff that's already busy, and you're going to want those returns to be there, the automation or the simplification or the standardization or whatever your value proposition is. You want them to be there. So this phase is just very tricky. And like I said, it's definitely, I'm definitely marketing at this point. I don't care. Like get someone experienced to walk through that with you, that knows, that's bought those, that knows the question is not just about integration, but about some of the promises that get made and how to make those technology decisions. But because you hear a lot of stories like, yeah, I regret it now,
Yep.
because they just didn't have the right information. So back to this, our platform will build your budget automatically in a matter of seconds. And unfortunately for them, I was not hooked in by that solution because my budgeting is very simple, even maybe easier than automatic. But it just reminded me of this, like how so much is oversold on, like they don't want you to hear complexity. They want you to hear value. They want you to hear bells and whistles and dashboard and all those kinds of things. And just have your filters up for sure. Get some experience with you. Dot your I's, cross your T's. We'll talk more about it in a future episode, some other techniques you can use to make sure you're making a good decision. That's the big idea.
Good stuff.
Hey, we're wrapping up now, Darrick. Any takeaways, from anything? Like any takeaways from anything we talked about today?
See, I learned David really hates waiting in line and really enjoys walking past people that are having to wait in line.
I don't mind at all. Like, it doesn't bother me. Because I'm not breaking. By the way, if you cut a line,
right,
that's cheating.
There's the I beat the system ethically. And also it works better for everybody. You're not hurting anybody.
I'm following the rules. Like
they're doing it
literally.
Yeah,
I'm following the rules, but I'm just faster than you.
They're writing the check at the grocery store cashier. You're walking around to the self-checkout line and moving on, going home.
We'll talk about self-checkout sometime. Yeah. What else? Any other takeaways? That's a good one.
Zoom, that's a pretty interesting decision. Your point about that being sort of self-destructive from a marketing standpoint, I thought it's pretty interesting that, gosh, if Zoom can't make it work, does anybody need Zoom?
By the way, I should have mentioned this during the Zoom. At Zoom, no, I won't do that again, but you were part of this project, but during COVID, we completed a 10-month ERP implementation project for a manufacturing facility with a team of about 30, and we did it all remote, except for the very last, pretty much go live. That's when we got together and did the factory. Did it all remote. So, why? There's many more projects can be done like that. So that's a good takeaway. Anything else?
Let's see.
There are more government agencies than we know about, right? Like
facts. Holy cow!
There are more, and laws getting passed, and you never know when the federal government's going to come knocking on your door and make you do this. So,
and I learned you said stroke on a government document, not slash. So, is it slash or dash? But
it's stroke. You have to say stroke, like the military does. Yeah. Yeah. That's my takeaway, and it's great. It's great to get to do this podcast with you, so I don't have to go to jail. I really appreciate that. Or teach senior residents how to handle their smartphones, or how to not start the baseball app when they shouldn't start the baseball app. We're going to have a lot more for people. We're going to talk next time. We're going to talk specifically about cybersecurity. We've got a lot of topics. We got a lot of news. We got a lot of banter. We got more stuff coming. So I think according to this letter, I'm supposed to say like and subscribe to the pod.
So it is pod, not podcast.
I think the cool kids say pod. And I think by the way, shout out to Ducky's Chowder House in Cayucas, California, wearing their hat. If you want me to wear your hat on the podcast, write me at podcast@alt-cio.com and I'll wear your hat too. They're not sponsoring me or anything. I just like their chowder. So
not yet.
Not yet, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and once this thing takes off,
look out.
Big time dough rolling in. I won't be able to keep up with the hats. Awesome. Well, hey, always great, Darrick. Until next time, we'll see you later. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Adios. Bye-bye.